They'd rather shut the government down than protect the health care of the American people. That's unfathomable.
They're shutting it down. We're not shutting it down. We don't want it to shut down because we have the greatest period of time ever.
This is Today as It Happened. Good Tuesday evening to you. I'm Holly Furfer, here with your chronological look at the biggest events and stories of the day. From the military rally in Quantico, Virginia, to Hamas reviewing President Trump's proposed plan for Gaza. But first, let's take a look at some of our other top headlines of the day. A second detainee shot in an attack on Dallas Immigration Field Office last week has died. 32-year-old Miguel Garcia Hernandez has been on life support. He was one of 3 detainees shot in the September 24th attack on an ICE facility. Authorities say 29-year-old Joshua John fired shots from a nearby rooftop before taking his own life. Investigators say John hated the U.S. government and wanted to incite terror by killing federal agents. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry asking the federal government to activate up to 1,000 National Guard troops. The troops would be deployed to cities like New Orleans and Baton Rouge to fight crime. Landry cites high rates of homicides, carjackings, and gang violence, along with law enforcement shortages. This deployment would last through the 2026 fiscal year. The U.S. government starts phasing out paper checks for most programs today. The change affects people who receive benefits, including Social Security, supplemental security income, and tax refunds. The Trump administration says the shift to electronic payments is designed to protect taxpayers from fraud and cut costs. Nearly 400,000 Social Security and SSI recipients receive those benefits through paper checks. Advocates fear the shift will hurt marginalized Americans who lack access to digital services. President Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth welcomed hundreds of military commanders today at Quantico Marine Base. The Pentagon had summoned generals and admirals from around the world. They didn't tell them why, but now we know that Pete Hegseth, Secretary Hegseth, said they are going to remake the Defense Department with warrior ethos, and President Trump, as you see there live, also addressing the admirals to talk more about their plans. Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull joins us now live. And Haley, so what has the president been saying so far? Have we heard anything new in this speech to these leaders?
Yeah, Holly, the president speaking right now in a speech that we were told would focus on what the administration calls warrior ethos. The president, in his remarks, has largely condemned what he calls wokeness in the military, as he has also touted at the same time what he views as efforts to rebuild the military, efforts to end conflicts overseas, and his domestic policies when it comes to combating immigration as well as crime that he sees in certain cities. He particularly has focused on his recent peace proposal in the Middle East, in which we are waiting to hear a final word from Hamas on, as well as his disappointment with Putin amidst the ongoing efforts to end Russia's war in Ukraine. But notably, Holly, while the president is talking about conflicts abroad, he is also underscoring what he called the enemy within during his remarks. This comes as the president has suggested surging federal resources into other cities to combat crime. And this is notable. The president saying this.
Together we're reawakening the warrior spirit, and this is a spirit that won and built this nation, and from the cavalry that tamed the Great Plains to the ferocious, unyielding power of Patton Bradley and the great General Douglas MacArthur. These are all great men. In this effort, we're a team, and so my message to you is very simple. I am with you, I support you, and as president, I have your backs 100%. You'll never see me even waver a little bit.
But more specifically, Holly, what the president said, or suggested rather, was use what he called dangerous cities, as he said, a training ground for troops, noting that they would be going into Chicago. very soon. Now, this all comes as Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth focused in his remarks on culture and what he called fixing, quote, decades of decay. He accused the military of becoming the, quote, woke department and focusing on the wrong things. Of course, under Hegseth's leadership, he has undertaken efforts to ban transgender troops, end diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, fire some senior leaders, make physical standards for women the same as men, and change the name from the Department of Defense to the Department of War. Notably, Hegseth in his remarks indicated he doesn't want a son serving alongside troops who are out of shape or females who can't meet the same combat arms physical standards as men, saying that that's not about preventing women from serving. He also said it was unacceptable to see what he called fat generals. Listen.
I don't want my son serving alongside troops who are out of shape, or in combat unit with females who can't meet the same combat arms physical standards as men, or troops who are not fully proficient on their assigned weapons, platform, or task, or under a leader who was the first, but not the best. Standards must be uniform, gender neutral, and high. If not, they're not standards. They're just suggestions. Suggestions that get our sons and daughters killed. When it comes to combat arms units, and there are many different stripes across our joint force, the era of politically correct, overly sensitive, don't hurt anyone's feelings leadership ends right now. At every level, either you can meet the standard, either you can do the job, either you are disciplined, fit, and trained, or you are out.
And of course, Holly, as these speeches are happening in front of the military's top brass, all gathered in Quantico, a rare occasion, it is coming on the eve of a potential government shutdown.
News White House correspondent Haley Bull. Haley, thank you for that update. Coming up on Today As It Happened.
When people from different backgrounds and who hold different political beliefs speak up and listen to each other, they are able to share what matters to them, what their challenges are, and we find that there is significant common ground. There's more that connects us than divides us.
You're watching Today As It Happened, Scripps News rundown of the biggest events and stories of the day. So let's jump right in. The Department of Health and Human Services says it wants to exclude Harvard University from federal funding. It's all because federal officials allege Harvard took no action to stop anti-Semitism on campus. HHS said it's referring Harvard for suspension and disbarment proceedings. Now, if the university is found guilty, it could mean the elimination of federal funding and new federal contracts for the nation's oldest and richest institution. Harvard has 20 days to request a hearing in response. The recommendation comes after a judge ruled the Trump administration should restore billions of dollars it withheld from the institution. A new lawsuit against Brown University has sparked debate about the secrecy of law enforcement at private colleges in the U.S. Unlike public police departments, private institutions often do not have to disclose arrest records or incident reports. The ACLU of Rhode Island is challenging this by arguing that Brown's police should comply with public records laws.
Well, this case was actually generated by two journalists who independently filed requests for records of arrests that were made by the Brown University police in different incidents. And the Brown University police said, we have no obligation to give you those records, and we aren't going to give them to you.
What would be consistent with my experience with them is that the motivation for this was just to keep things out of the paper, just to keep their name from, having any negative press, even the slightest hint. I feel like if you have nothing to hide, you should be willing to release that. And I don't really know why they've turned it into such a big issue when I think it's like I said, what do they have to hide?
America Online, AOL, ditching dial-up internet service today, ending an era for the company that was once the biggest name in internet connectivity. The internet service is a throwback of the World Wide Web's early days. In the 1990s, the familiar sound of dial-up connection was the signature tone of getting online. But as of 2023, only about 1% of U.S. households with internet subscriptions were using dial-up exclusively. A new study from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation shows that a majority of voters, no matter which party they align with, share similar beliefs and concerns about their communities. Joining us now is Dr. Lauren Smith, who helped gather and review research data on voter sentiment ahead of this potential shutdown. Dr. Smith, tell us what you hope to learn from this study.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I think what's important to highlight in this study is that when people from different backgrounds and who hold different political beliefs speak up and listen to each other, they are able to share what matters to them, what their challenges are, and we find that there is significant common ground. There's more that connects us than divides us.
Yeah, so the sentiment that stood out was the amount of people who didn't think where they lived should impact their ability to thrive, and that they thought community and their local communities and where they lived was more important than the country as a whole. Explain that, if you would.
So what we found was 94% of people believe the idea that a zip code, that is where you happen to live, shouldn't determine what your access is to clean water, to safe and affordable housing, to a decent job, to healthy and affordable food. People really agreed across all backgrounds that that was the case.
And you know, on top of that, it seems that what many people considered basic necessities, you mentioned the clean water, but they were safety, housing costs, health care, all important across party lines. What does that tell you?
Well, it really tells us that people face the same challenges and really highlight the same things that they want in their community. They're looking to have safe neighborhoods. They're looking to have affordable housing and a good job. And they're concerned about the fact, in fact, 4 in 5 people said that they were concerned that the cost of living was increasing such that longtime residents wouldn't be able to stay in their neighborhoods.
So what did people feel like the role of government then was in helping with these issues that they're concerned about?
Well, that's really interesting. The majority of people, almost 60, more than 60%, believed that the government had an essential role in helping communities solve problems. And this was especially the case. More than 90% of folks believe that that was the case for affordable housing, which was one of the top areas that people identified.
So a lot of them, though, thought that in this survey that the country was moving in the wrong direction. So how does that play into all of this? Because as we are talking on the eve of a potential complete government shutdown, we're hearing rhetoric from both sides. We're seeing political violence increase. What should our takeaway from that be?
I think the takeaway really is that people need to follow the advice of my grandmother, who says you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you should use them in that proportion. The folks in this study identified the ability to listen, to learn from each other, and people really wanted the same thing. They wanted communities where people could feel welcome. They wanted to be able to sort of take care of their families, and they wanted the best for others as well.
In the survey, what I noticed was a lot of people said they depended more on local governments, their local communities to solve problems more than the federal government. Have we seen this trend change? And is what's happening in the country, across the country, as we are becoming more politically polarized, is that playing into sort of this idea that I need to depend on what's around me and not look at the bigger picture because the bigger picture is not pretty at the moment?
Holly, that's a really important point. The survey found that there was strong consensus that people felt that they had the power to make changes with others at the local level, less so at the state and national level. But what's also important is that more than 60% of people identified that they could make changes in concert or with their neighbors. They didn't think that they could make changes in their communities on their own, but they knew that if they worked together, they could with their neighbors.
Do you think this would translate then to people feeling more empowered to make changes nationwide, looking at the bigger picture, not just thinking in their own communities, but thinking about in their state overall or their neighboring states or, across the country? Because as we know, we don't all just live anymore in our communities. Our kids move away, our parents move away. So are they feeling like maybe they can make an impact at some point across the country? As a country, we come together, or maybe they're just more defeated about feeling locally that that's the only thing they can really move the needle on?
Well, I would say that there was a strong sense that people could have an impact in government across those levels, from local to state to national. It just decreased as you moved further out from where people actually live. But there was still a significant majority of folks who thought that there could be and should be a way to work with government at the national level to make a difference.
That's encouraging to hear. I like to hear that. What about the cost of living? What were people saying about what they can afford these days when they go to the grocery store, when they put gas in their car?
There was very strong consensus that people were concerned and facing the same challenges. And you mentioned several of them. The rising cost of living, that includes the cost of housing, that includes the cost of food, the availability and cost of healthcare. All of those kinds of real pocketbook, kitchen table issues bubbled up as being areas of deep common ground across all the folks that were connected for this survey.
Dr. Lauren Smith, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, thank you for bringing this to our attention. A very interesting survey, and it gives us hope. And we know that we are at the end of the day concerned about the same things and all alike. We appreciate you being here with us today. Up next on Today As It Happened.
We're just waiting for Hamas, and Hamas is either going to be doing it or not, and if it's not, it's going to be a very sad end.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. All right, let's check back in on our daily briefing of today's top stories.
How long do you plan to give Hamas to respond to the ceasefire proposal you've laid out?
Well, we're going to do about 3 or 4 days. We'll see how it is. All of the Arab countries are signed up. The Muslim countries all signed up. Israel's all signed up. We're just waiting for Hamas. And Hamas is either going to be doing it or not. And if it's not, it's going to be a very sad end.
Speaking to people in Gaza, you get a great deal of pessimism when you ask them what they think of the prospects of peace with this proposal, this 20-point proposal put forth by President Trump and agreed to by Netanyahu. Many people think that Hamas will not agree to it, and others think that, well, Hamas will. They believe that once Hamas releases the Israeli hostages, that Israel will renew hostilities and the war will continue. Of course, people living in Gaza have seen 2 ceasefires break down and the war continue. They've also seen many false starts, many hopeful bouts of ceasefire talks not go anywhere. So in this instance, they remain pessimistic. When it comes to Hamas, we understand that they are holding consultations both internally and outside of Gaza with both the military and the political leadership, and they are expected to respond to this proposal in the coming days. They are being leaned on very heavily by their backers, Qatar and Turkey, and we understand that they are both meeting with Hamas this afternoon. Of course, Hamas will resist calls to disarm. They do not want to disarm, and they are also under this proposal being told that they will have no role in the future governing of Gaza. On that point, they have shown some flexibility in the past. They've been willing to allow a neutral Palestinian entity to govern Gaza, but they've never shown willingness to give up their arms. So it will be interesting to see if they can bring themselves to make that concession. Now, when it comes to reaction in Israel, we've seen widespread celebration of this proposal, both by the family members of the hostages who have thanked President Trump and said that this is the moment they've been waiting for, but also by opposition leaders from across the political spectrum. They've all welcomed this development. Where we've seen less enthusiastic support for this proposal is amongst the far right members of Benjamin Netanyahu's ruling coalition. They say that they oppose this proposal, and they are meeting and consulting and deciding how to respond. Of course, they have the power to leave the governing coalition and to collapse Netanyahu's government. Particularly, they are against this idea that the Palestinian Authority, a reformed Palestinian Authority, will take over control of Gaza eventually from a transitional technocratic government. Netanyahu himself, in the press conference yesterday with President Trump, seemed to downplay the likelihood of that. He said that the transformation that would be required of the Palestinian Authority would be radical and would need to be genuine. And then the other point the far right are completely against is this mention of a pathway to a Palestinian state in the proposal. Of course, even Netanyahu himself has vowed that he will never allow a Palestinian state to be created. The far right go further, though. They are against this promise that Israel will not annex Gaza, they will not occupy Gaza, and that Palestinians will not be forced to leave Gaza, and the ones who have left will be allowed to return. They oppose those points because they have long advocated for the displacement of the entire civilian population of Gaza and for Gaza to be reoccupied and resettled. And of course, they could very well leave the government and try to collapse the government over their opposition to this ceasefire and peace proposal. However, other opposition leaders, moderate opposition leaders in Israel, including Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid, have said that if that were to happen, they would prop up the government, they would support the government, and make sure they had the votes needed in order for this ceasefire proposal to go through. Blake Sifton, Scripps News Group, Tel Aviv.
Coming up on Today As It Happened.
Moving forward, all new medications introduced by Pfizer to the American market will be sold at the reduced most favored nation cost.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer, here with your daily rundown of today's top stories. President Trump is delivering remarks regarding pharmaceuticals, so let's listen in.
For many years, Americans have paid the highest prices anywhere in the world for prescription drugs. They paid far more, 10 times, 13 times, 15 times more than other countries for the exact same product. A major reason is that the American consumers have been subsidizing research and development costs for the entire planet. They put all of that on us, and yet they were the beneficiaries too. So it's being changed as of today. The United States at just 4% of the world's population and consumers, only 13% of all prescription drugs, yet pharmaceutical companies make 75% of their profits from the United States. So think of that. We have 4% of the market, 13% of prescription drugs, and yet, Albert, I didn't know you were that violent. I'm surprised you're agreeing to this.
Getting better.
No, he's doing the right thing. Thank you. And today, Pfizer is committing, as will other drug companies as we go through the weeks. But Pfizer is truly one of the biggest in the world and one of the greatest in the world. Today, Pfizer is committing to offer all of their prescription medications to Medicaid, and it will be at the most favored nation's prices. It's going to have a huge impact on bringing Medicaid costs down. Like nothing else. Pfizer is agreeing to provide some of their most popular current medications to all consumers at heavily discounted prices of anywhere between 50 and even 100%, and that's off the price. And in some cases, even more than that. These drugs will be available for direct purchase online at a website operated by the federal government. We're also announcing that moving forward, all new medications introduced by Pfizer to the American market will be sold at the reduced most favored nation cost. So we'll be paying essentially what other countries are paying, who have been much lower, much lower for many, many years.
Moments ago, President Trump announcing a new White House initiative for Americans to buy affordable prescription drugs. Now, the platform called TrumpRx would allow U.S. consumers to buy drugs directly on a government website at pre-negotiated prices. Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull is live with us now at the White House. Haley, good afternoon. What can you tell us about this new initiative by the White House? What does it mean for us?
Yeah, Maritza, this is all part of their broader effort to cut down the cost of medication. And the president today announcing new steps from Pfizer in particular. President Trump says the company is committing to offer prescription medications to Medicaid holders at most favored nations pricing, to offer others at discounts to more consumers. for new medications introduced to the U.S. market to be sold at those most favored nations' costs, to reshore manufacturing, and to set up purchases directly through a federal government-operated site. The president suggesting that they are in talks with others and expect more announcements from companies to come in the future. Listen.
We're working with other major pharmaceutical companies to secure similar agreements. Everyone understands that the status quo where Americans pay more for drugs, prescription drugs, and they pay more than foreign countries who take advantage of us in many other ways, although not so many anymore. I think we've pretty well got that stopped, right? I think so. We've stopped that, but they took advantage of a lot of other presidents, that I can tell you. But we're making this pay to be very unacceptable what they've done in the past.
Now, Maritza, this stems from an order the president rolled out last spring to allow direct-to-consumer sales at that most favored nation pricing and to pursue those prices with pharmaceutical manufacturers. It also follows a letter that the White House sent to companies over the summer, giving them 60 days to make commitments. And as President Trump has threatened steeper tariffs on pharmaceutical products unless companies are breaking ground or have their manufacturing plants under construction in the United States.
Yeah, that's right. All right, Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull, we thank you so much.
More of your paycheck is likely to go towards your health insurance premiums next year. Healthcare costs are rising faster than wage growth, and the trend is directly impacting how employers are approaching their sponsored healthcare plans for employees.
It's going to vary a lot from employer to employer and plan to plan, but in general, we're talking 6.5%.
Sunit Patel is the chief actuary of U.S. Health at Mercer. That 6.5% is relative to wage growth, which is averaging 3%. That means more of your income will go towards healthcare expenditures.
People with a single income have a lot less wiggle room, so to speak. I think people with kids will be really affected because obviously their kids are insured with them.
For employers sponsoring health plans, it's a much bigger increase than expected. The biggest increase in 15 years, according to Mercer.
About 60% of employers are planning not only to increase payroll contributions, but increasing cost sharing. So that could be copays, deductibles, co-insurances, or out-of-pocket maximums.
Patel said employers made a significant effort in recent years during the pandemic to absorb those costs. But now changes in the larger economy have altered the equation.
I think the cost pressures are more significant. And even though there is a focus on employee health and well-being, there's certainly just that financial reality.
There is inflation, an aging population that uses more health care and better treatments with higher price tags.
Innovations have allowed treatment for diseases that did not experience any treatment options. You can think, for example, of like GLP-1 drugs, such as Wegovy, that are obviously treating important diseases.
Mercer's projections put 2026 as the fourth consecutive year of rising healthcare costs following a decade of moderate increases. The Kaiser Family Foundation annual report last year found coverage costs rose about 24% between 2019 and 2024, but wage growth matched the increases at 28%. It's not all bad news for workers. Employers are paying more for mental health care options. Mercer's survey found access to mental health care benefits ranked third in employers' list of priorities. Access includes resources inside and outside of the health care plans.
A federal judge ruled the Trump administration's targeting of non-citizens for pro-Palestinian protests as unconstitutional. Judge William Young siding with plaintiffs who say the ideological deportations are a violation of the First Amendment. Now, the Homeland Security Department has not commented on this decision.
Hi, and welcome to Reading Rainbow.
Oh, anyone else pumped up about this? Reading Rainbow making a comeback with a new host, Michael the Librarian. Michael Threets became influential on social media, promoting libraries, mental health awareness, and kindness. He'll be taking his joy and enthusiasm for reading to the relaunch of the beloved show October 4th. Now, Reading Rainbow, the OG, launched in 1983. It became the most watched PBS program in classrooms That show won more than 250 awards during its 26-year run. Comedy's big names like Dave Chappelle, Kevin Hart, and Pete Davidson are performing at Saudi Arabia's Riyadh Comedy Festival, and they are catching some heat for it. Fellow comedians, including some who rejected invitations, are now blasting the comics because of Saudi Arabia's sweeping crackdowns on dissent and also the country's history of human rights issues. The Middle Eastern country has poured money into sports, entertainment, and tourism in recent years in an attempt to reshape its global image.
Yeah, this plane's trashed.
Okay, let's do this. Okay, so that is from K-pop Demon Hunters on Netflix, one of my son's favorite shows. It's inspiring tweens and teens, though, to recreate that scene using hashtags K-pop Noodle Challenge and Demon Hunters Ramen. Here's the problem. Parents say their kids are getting burned by the very hot soup. The burns from noodles make up nearly a third of pediatric burn injuries. That's according to Shriners Children's Boston. A physician at the hospital said they're actually seeing noodle injuries 2 to 3 times a week. Physicians are urging parents and guardians to watch your children who are, those children more susceptible to burns than adults.
Up next on Today As It Happened.
Americans are living through a civility paradox. Coming up, what a new survey found about the state of civility in the U.S. and what experts say we can do about it.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. All right, let's jump right back into our rundown of the top stories of the day.
Amid a recent wave of political violence, there have been calls for a return to civility. But a new survey shows that most Americans view society as uncivil. Americans are living through a civility paradox.
Americans believe that they're civil, but they actually don't believe and trust that others are that way.
That's according to a new report out Tuesday that shows nearly all Americans see themselves as civil, but just a quarter see society as civil. Driving factors include digital aggression, including social media and online arguments, polarized politics, and an overall erosion of kindness. Bill Imada is with the group that conducted the survey.
People are seeing this division in politics. They see it on TV, they see it in social media. They see it in their communities, and they feel that division.
That division goes beyond politics. Leaders at the University of Colorado apologized after fans shouted anti-Mormon chants during a football game against BYU on Saturday. And golf fans were criticized for abusive behavior during the Ryder Cup tournament this past weekend. Professor Emily Sidner says disrespect in other parts of society could be sparked by that seen from lawmakers.
We learn social behaviors by watching other people.
In terms of a solution, most Americans agree responsibility for upholding civility starts with individuals.
I think if we start as individuals, that's the best place right now. You don't want this to go on because it's a slippery slope, and we know that incivility is like a virus and it spreads.
Emily Sidner noted that when examining this survey, it's important to keep in mind incivility could mean different things to different people. She said some forms of legitimate protest may be viewed by some as uncivil behavior. Now, the researchers noted this caveat too and said because of varying definitions of civility, more research is warranted.
Coming up on Today As It Happened.
Hey, this president ran on reducing costs. That partly got him elected. And what have we seen happen in the last 8 months? Cost of health care is going to skyrocket for working class people because he wanted to give a big tax cut to billionaires.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened, Scripps News debrief of our top stories of the day. So let's get to it.
If there is a shutdown, how many federal workers do you plan to lay off?
Well, we may do a lot, and that's only because of the Democrats.
The federal government could shut down Wednesday morning if Congress doesn't reach a deal. Democrats and Republicans are deadlocked over health care and spending issues. The House passed a 7-week funding extension, but Senate Democrats want health care benefits included. Thousands of federal workers could be furloughed or even laid off.
For the moment, all the facts are pointing in the direction that the government is going to shut down in 16 hours time. I think we can pull up what Senator Chuck Schumer has recently said, as well as what President Trump said on social media.
Mr. President, the next time you have something to say about me, don't cop out through a racist and fake AI video. When I'm back in the Oval Office, say it to my face.
And the American people are asking, is this the golden age that Donald Trump promised? Medicare about to be gutted by $500 billion with a T dollars?
So now, according to an Axios report from last week, what we've seen the minority leader do is he built a private war room, their quote, private war room with liberal groups to orchestrate a shutdown. So when I hear the minority leader come to the floor, say, oh, we don't want to do it. He's been orchestrating this, according to this news report, for months.
The leader says it's a clean bill. It's a partisan bill. Not once were Democrats asked for what input should be in the bill. We were not told about it. We were not asked about it, etc.
According to a new report just released minutes ago from the Congressional Budget Office, if the government shuts down, about 750,000 employees will be furloughed. Government employees will be furloughed each day. The cost of that, humongous. An estimated $400 million a day in payroll for the federal government. For Americans who get their health care on states' public exchanges, are you concerned about that cliff that could be coming at the end of the year when they look to sign up again for health insurance next year?
So we're working on that, but understand that doesn't take effect until the end of the year. And we said we're willing to work on it, and this CR only goes to November 21. So what's the problem, right?
We should deal with the ACA credit issue right now. And the reason is people's costs are going up, this fall. They're getting letters already.
They are shutting it down. We're not shutting it down. We don't want it to shut down because we have the greatest period of time ever. With that being said, we can do things during the shutdown that are irreversible, that are bad for them and irreversible by them, like cutting vast numbers of people out, cutting things that they like, cutting programs that they like.
Trump admitted himself that he is using Americans as political pawns.
Another government shutdown looking more likely. Just 6.5 hours to go here. 750,000 federal workers could be furloughed or worse if no deal is reached. We have live pictures now on the Senate floor. The Senate is going to hold a vote on the funding bill momentarily here. It's supposed to start at 5:30 Eastern Time. And Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed is live on Capitol Hill. Nate, I heard you were talking to a Democrat there outside of the Capitol who will likely vote for the bill. What can you tell us?
Yeah, an outspoken Democrat, Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, saying that he will vote in favor of this government funding patch that Republicans largely support, kind of bucking his party for the most part. Most Democrats saying they will not vote in favor of this government funding deal because it doesn't give Democrats anything that they're asking for. And what they're asking for is a clean extension of the ACA Affordable Care Act enhanced subsidies, which took effect in 2021. Those expire at the end of this year. As the sun sets over Washington, though, both parties are dug in, and it appears like a shutdown is on the horizon. Here's Senator John Fetterman just a couple of moments ago.
I'm going to vote to keep it open in March, and I'm going to be there in September, and here I am.
Will you take a paycheck if the government shuts down?
Well, by law, you can't refuse it. So, I mean, it's for me, my big concern is the chaos and all those. So, for me, it's about the country before the party. Now, for all that, I don't know how many Democrats are going to vote for that this evening. You are going to, tonight you are facing it that your vote quite literally would determine if this government's going to shut down. That's where we are. Last week, it was a much different kind of dynamic. This time, your vote, we need 8, and I don't know how many of that 8 show up if we do.
Senator, as it looks increasingly likely that the government does shut down tonight, how do Democrats get out of this?
If that happens, that's a sad day for the country. It truly is. We have to find a better solution. As a senator, I think that's one of our core responsibilities. Keep the government open, and then keep it open, and then debate and figure out some kinds of compromise. Now, and this CR, this is the same CR we voted for this countless times already, and this is actually part of the Biden administration. So why are we voting to shut the government down on the same thing? We should add more or extend more health benefits, but that's not the opportunity to shut our government down.
Are you at all optimistic that there could be an 11th hour compromise?
I'm not optimistic. I'm not optimistic, sadly. But remember, we don't have to. I mean, we had 10 in March, and now definitely Leader and our colleague from Hawaii is not going to vote for it definitely tonight. So that means we have 8 left, and we need 8 votes. And now every one of us that showed up in March have to show up. We could even be this count can't be any more than 60, but it would be really tragic if it's at 58 or even 59. Everyone that showed up in March has to show up because 2 are off the table. So we need everyone. That's that's basic math.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay.
Thanks, Senator. Thanks for stopping.
And look, it just does not seem likely that those Democratic senators, cross party lines. Now, just a quick math reminder here, Maritza. Republicans control the House, they control the Senate, they hold the White House with President Donald Trump. But in the Senate, it requires 60 votes to pass the vast majority of legislation. That's called the filibuster, 60 out of 100 votes. Republicans only control 53, meaning that they will need some Democrats crossing party lines, voting with them to pass this government funding package. Otherwise, we'll be staring down a shutdown. This is a redo vote for this government funding bill attempt, which is happening on the Senate floor right now. They tried this several weeks ago. It failed. What they're doing right now is effectively a Hail Mary to see if they can prevent this government shutdown from happening midnight tonight. But just off camera, Maritza, I'm watching loads of federal legislative branch workers, people who work for Congress, leaving the Capitol for the evening. When or if they come back tomorrow will first of all depend on if they're an essential employee, or if they come back, they will not be paid until a shutdown ends. They will receive back pay as the result of legislation that passed several years ago. But there's a major question about how long employees could either be furloughed or be forced to come in here and work without pay. The Capitol police officers, for example, which keep the U.S. Capitol safe, they're forced to come in because they're deemed mission critical. They would work without pay until such a date that the government reopens and they get that back pay that they've been entitled to under the law. But again, a lot more questions than answers going into the shutdown tonight about how long this will last, what the way out could look like, Maritza.
Yeah, we remember the last time this happened, late 2018 going into 2019. It was 34 days, so who knows what will happen next. We know you'll stay on top of it for us, though. Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed live on Capitol Hill for us with a beautiful skyline behind him. Thanks for keeping us up to date.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening for Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. Have a great Tuesday night.